After seeing the most disgusting set of guitar strings on some of my students' guitars, I realised that a lot of them don't know how to change their guitar strings on the classical guitar. Here's a video that just goes through it. It's a really, really simple process. Hopefully, once you get to the confidence of doing it, you'll be able to do it more often, because good God, some of those instruments seriously needed a restring. It's like playing on elastic bands. It's a really simple process to change your guitar strings on the classical guitar. All you really need is just a new set of strings. You don't really need anything more than that. Some of the extra things that I can show you will help you along the way and will protect your guitar, maybe just make it a little nicer and quicker. So all you need to do is grab yourself your new guitar strings. They're really cheap. Get them from a local music shop or online music shop. Got to support those music shops. So here we go. All you got to do to start off with is maybe find a little rag, a tea towel or something nice and clean, just to protect the guitar. I'm going to stuff it under the strings, just like that. Make sure it's draping over the edge. What that's going to do is it's going to make sure that you don't dink your guitar. So I'm going to just go ahead and undo all of these strings. Take them out of the top of the instrument, and then you can actually take off the bottom bit quite easily. Just for ease of use, I'm just going to hold the U string between my thumb and finger, and I'm just going to wind it around like this. And then once it's there, I'm just going to wind it in on itself. Very, very straightforward, just like that. Now if you want to make this process a little quicker, you can get yourself one of these bad boys. It's just a string winder, super, super cheap. Don't get bothered with the expensive ones. I've had this for like 10 years. I think it was about 40p or something. You don't need all the fancy bits. And basically what you're going to do is just whack it on there and detune it like that. With the treble ones, what you might want to do is to just very, very carefully thread it back through this way, because sometimes I like to put a little knot on treble strings. And it pops through, make sure you catch it on the other side. Once you've got all your strings off, then you can clean your guitar. If it's particularly dirty, I'd recommend some lemon oil, because it's quite inoffensive to the guitar and it just sort of gets all the grime off. You dab it on just with this little applicator thing and just wipe it off. Dead simple. If your guitar's not particularly gross, most of my students' guitars are really gross, I don't know why. And what I like to use next is maybe a little bit of this product called Fast Fret. Not sure if it really does anything. It smells good though, and I kind of like the feel of it underneath my fingers. It's almost like a little oil. Some people say it elongates the life of your fretboard, but I don't know how much these claims are really kind of true. I just like the smell and it's kind of nice to feel under your fingers. Just pop it on your frets like this. Dead simple. And then you just wipe the excess off with a cloth that comes with it. Again, you don't really need to use this stuff in actuality, but it kind of makes it nice, you know. Okay, now we've got to the tricky bit, which is actually attaching your new strings to the instrument. Okay, let's get ourselves prepped up here. And I've lost my strings again. Jeez. Such a klutz. Okay, there are loads of different types of strings, but I'd recommend this brand, D'Addario. I mean, there's Savares, there's, I don't know, Hanabach. There's like a million different types of strings. It's good to, when you have a new guitar, if it's particularly a nice guitar, you can try out a few different string types and find out which one works best for you. D'Addario, Savare, all the major brands have got a great variety of different string sub-brands that they use. I'm just using the ProArt Carbon hard tension ones. EJ46FF. Very, very catchy. Open them up. I'm gonna have to clean this room later on. And with D'Addario you find these little tags, and these tell you what strings they actually are, so they correspond. You have to put the right string on the right area of the guitar, but it seems really obvious, but some people don't realise that. Other ones use like a colour coding chart. Just make sure you put the right one on. Starting off with the E, I'm just gonna pull this little tag off. I like to put the end that had the tag on towards the machine heads, just simply because it's got a bit of glue on it from the tab. Okay, here we go. So with the treble strings, what we want to do is put a little knot in them but the process is exactly the same for the bass strings as it is the treble. I'm going to go in this way, the appropriate hole, maybe have about that much slack. What we're going to do is we're going to go underneath the original string, around, and then we're going to sort of twist it underneath itself. I like to do it 3 times on the top E string. You really need to do it twice on the other strings. And that's it. If you want to put the Grammy knot on there, if you want to put a little secure knot, let's just unwind this. Then once it's gone through the hole, just do yourself a really, really basic knot. And then the exact same process. 1, 2, 3 for the top E string, and then pull it tight. Moving up to the top of the guitar, I like to just put the bass on the floor there, and then I like to put it in that way. Now a lot of people give it a load of slack. You don't need that much slack at all for classical guitar strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the hole, and I'm going to go back out this way, and then I'm going to go either back through the hole, which is quite a common way of doing it, or what I like to do is kind of like loop it round the string. I'm going to go back the way I came and just tighten it up. Now a lot of people give it a load of slack. You don't need that much slack at all for classical guitar strings. Because I've gone round the string itself, as you're tightening it, the correct way to tighten it is as you're looking at the machine head clockwise, and that's going to make the spindle move essentially away from the neck. If you put the guitar string underneath where it actually came from, what happens is it tightens down onto itself. So it means that it's not going to slowly slip out. Just double check with this first one that your bridge, if it's a sort of floaty bridge or a floaty nut at the top here, that it's seated correctly. We're just going to tighten it up. Get it nice and reasonably tight. Enjoy the banjo sound with the... This is where your string winder comes in use here, just for whacking these strings up. Careful not to over tighten there, because you can often overshoot with these quite quickly. It's not really a big job, it shouldn't take you too long, but the change in the sound of your guitar is incredible. It sounds so much better when you've changed these strings. I've had guitar students have strings on from when they actually bought their guitar, and that will be like 2-3 years ago, even one. Man, they were so corroded, and when I put a new set of strings on for them, it was just like having a whole new instrument again. It was brilliant. And for the price of like a £10 pack of strings. It's amazing. Okay, now on to the bass strings. The process is exactly the same, but I'm just gonna grab the camera and get some close-up for you. Okay, so let's go through this again. Occasionally, strings will have like a little bit of loose winding on the back here, on one of the ends. Make sure that that end is at the headstock, because you don't want that around your bridge. In this way, through the hole. Just like that. Really, really simple. And then we're gonna pick it up. We're gonna go around. Nice load of slack. Give you this enough work. You can always cut that out for later. I'm gonna round this string like that. And then I'm gonna go over the top of the string, and I'm going to push it underneath, sort of curving it around the original string itself. And with the bass strings especially, just hold on to that little tail and yank it tight. Now it's time to do the top. This is my D strings, I'm going to make sure it's on the D string bit. I'm going to pop it into the hole, like this. Make sure it's seated correctly here on the nut. I'm going to go back through this way. You see we've gone back through this bit here. And we're going to go nice and taut. We're going to go underneath like that. We're going to go back the way we came, that way. Quite tight. You can see it kind of loops in on itself there. At that point you just hold it and tighten it on up. Beautiful. Right, so we've completely restrung it, but now we've got these crazy extra bits here. You can either put them in a loop, but I just like to cut them off. It's useful to put them in a loop if you're potentially going to use them later on a different instrument, or use them as spare strings, which I occasionally will do. Usually like about 2-3 centimeters of spare, and that's all you need really. And you can do this with some pliers, some cable snippers, or in fact you can do it with scissors, just your regular scissors. Okay, down to the bottom, so you need to be a little bit more careful in this bit here, because occasionally they do slip. One thing I do like to do is just push that in a little bit with my thumb, make sure there's like no wiggle room. Once you've got enough tension on there, they kind of tension themselves almost, they lock themselves into place. I'm just going to get rid of some of the excess here. Doesn't matter so much if the treble strings are touching the actual instrument top, but if the bass ones are touching, you'll want to try and get those off. Maybe just bend the string up a little bit and then cut the excess off, simply because they will rattle against the top of this guitar when you're playing it. I don't like that sound. I don't think anyone else really likes that sound. Snip those bad boys off. All you need to do now is tune it up. I'm going to use a tuner, even though 99% of the time I tune that ear. Actually, that was weirdly almost bang on. What? Alright, so your strings will detune quite a lot over the next couple of days. Don't worry, that's totally natural. It'll take a little while to settle in. There is one more thing after you've snipped your strings that you can do, and I wouldn't necessarily advise people do this unless they've had to change their strings really close to when they're going to perform in an exam or in a concert. And that is to manually sort of bump up the tension on the string to kind of stretch the strings. Again, be very careful because it's actually kind of a risky thing to do, but it can get your strings up and running a little faster. I'm going to do it today because I'm going to do some recording later on today as well. Just beware that they might snap. So if you're afraid of that, or you don't need to, just put up with the dodgy tuning for a couple of days. With your left hand, just loop your fingers around the string itself very gently with the top string, top E string, because that's the one that's most likely to snap. We're going to put our wrist down here and we're going to gently rock back against the string. Essentially what we're doing is we're pulling the string up, but it's kind of more, in a more controlled way. I'm going to work my way back on the strings and I'm going to push down on the other. Guitar strings can take a lot of punishment, particularly classical ones. So I'm not 100% like, I'm not super scared of these snapping, he says, touching wood. Be a little bit more careful with the D string again, because it's the thinnest wound metal one. Tune up again. Getting there. You can do this however many times you like, but really twice, maybe 3 times if you're in a particular rush. Things to avoid when you're stringing your guitar. I've seen people get hot pieces of metal, often like a teaspoon, and try and melt the ends of their treble strings. That really just doesn't work. If you're at that point where you're right at the edge of the treble, right at the edge before it goes in through the hole and fails, something's been messed up in the first place. You don't need to do that. You're just going to burn your guitar or your fingers. One of the other things not to do is to go and perform straight away after you've restrung your instrument. I mean like talking within the hour, because strings tend to take a little while to settle in. I'd say give it a good week for the strings to settle down before you're doing any kind of performing. That will just mean that your tuning accuracy is just spot on. Here we go. Oh yeah, that's perfect. If you have any like particular rattles after you've changed your guitar strings, chances are it's going to be the spare bit of string just rattling against the top of the guitar here. So just push those out of the way, or it's going to be your mess of guitar strings, spare guitar strings at the top here, especially if you've not cut them off. My other former tutor, Craig Ogden, used to despise it when there was loads of a spare string all around the headstock. So, you know, as the students would always neglect to actually snip them off just to annoy him. And occasionally he would just grab our guitars in lessons and snip the ends off because it would annoy him so much, which is just beautiful. Sorry, Craig, if you're watching that. Why would Craig be watching a video on how to change his guitar strings? So thanks for watching this video. I hope you've got something from it. It's not particularly like really interesting one, but you know, hope it helps with your next guitar string change.